Well, hey everybody, welcome back. Wow, here we are, episode 100, and what a journey it has been. So I thought it would be a lot of fun to spend the next 3 days talking about how I started with one single camera and a microphone and turned abandoned and forgotten places into what you see today. So sit back, relax, and let me take you on a 3-day journey down memory lane. Okay, so it was about this time when I think it was in late September, somewhere in there, starting to get pretty chilly in Nevada, so it was time to head back to Arizona because I needed to meet up with Frank Schlichting from Exploring Abandoned Mines out of Canada. So how did I get together with Frank? Well, it's not a long story, but it's a story. I contacted him via email, and eventually we started talking over the phone, and I told him, I said, well, when I get down into Arizona, why don't I put about maybe three weeks worth of reconning the area, so when he gets down there, we can immediately start jumping into all these different mines. And that's exactly how it played out. He showed up, and immediately I had a list of a lot of great locations that we could start exploring together. And it was during this time that we were doing so much exploring and going to so many different locations, I didn't have time to produce diversified intros like what I was doing in the past. So what I did instead is I created a brand new intro. And this is the one I was telling you about earlier with the music, with the adventure music. So with the help of him and flying his drone, I grabbed up all those clips, put together a brand new intro, and I used that intro during the entire time that I was working with Frank. Yeah, working with Frank was a lot of fun. I gotta tell you, that guy can move through mines. He is a Speedy Gonzales, if I ever did see one. Yes, you know, I move a little bit slower through these places because I like to focus the camera on stuff, you know, when I find artifacts and things of that nature. And Frank does too, but he has his own method, which is hit the nitrous button a lot of the times. But goodness, did we have a lot of fun and a lot of laughs. It was just some good times, guys. Frank, if you're watching this, I really look forward to getting together with you someday, and once again, we can dive into a few more abandoned mines. That'd be a lot of fun. So it was about this time when Frank and I had to go our separate ways. There was different areas of Arizona that he wanted to explore, and I had a really good friend of 26 years showing up. Haven't seen them in a while, and I really wanted to, you know, hang out. And eventually I asked, hey, do you want to be my camera person and follow me around for a while? Well, they were just a little bit reluctant in following me into abandoned mines, but I eventually talked them into it. But there was one rule: I could not. I couldn't say whether it was a male or a female. I couldn't give out their names. They absolutely did not want to be in front of the camera, and so I honored their request. And but hey, you know what? We had a lot of fun. I got a really good camera person out of the deal, and they were super committed. Got some incredible shots following me around inside of these old mines, and at the end of the day, we had a blast. And I know you're watching out there. Kudos to you. You were awesome. From time to time, just traveling to an abandoned mine is half the adventure. On this episode of Abandoned and Forgotten Places, I take you to one of the most difficult sites I have ever driven to with my trusty Jeep, Old Bob. Hours of climbing over rocks and boulders and sometimes even dried up waterfalls led me to this rare and unexpected find. Because of its incredible remoteness, I found some interesting machinery still left in place by the miners themselves and spared from a remaining lifetime in someone's rock garden. With its headframe long gone, wood scavenged for use at other mines in the area or just simply decomposed by the ravages of time, this mine brought its ore up via a 400-foot vertical shaft and was hauled off by trucks to be processed at local mills. Many mines, such as this, have no remaining public records, but after finding parts and pieces of Model A's and Model T's in the immediate area, my best guess is these mines were in production sometime around 1929. You just never know what you'll find exploring the desert Southwest, so today, come along with me as I explore some of western Arizona's most remote and hidden abandoned mines. Arizona, a place of endless beauty, incredible vistas, and rugged landscapes. Hidden deep in the nooks and crannies of this great state lie an abundance of abandoned mines, waiting to be found and their stories told. Over the last 6 months, I've done my very best to find some of the most interesting mines to document, but with this episode, the winter adventure season of 2020 comes to a close. Today on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, we finish this winter's adventure first with a location not recognized on any map, but with interesting stories to tell. Then, we move to a much larger mine filled with massive quartz veins and other interesting geology. Abandoned mines, large and small, cover western Arizona, and each one tells a story in its own unique way. You just never know what you'll find when exploring the darkness of an abandoned mine. So today, come along with me as I explore 2 more interesting locations and finish this winter's chapter of Arizona's abandoned mines. Okay, so here we are. It's at this point where my editing skills are, for the most part, starting to mature pretty well, and the channel's growing. It's starting to receive a fairly decent amount of revenue, via the tip jar and YouTube ad revenue. So it was at this point when the channel had enough money to finally purchase a drone. And that's where everything changed. When I started using cinematic footage with very cinematic music, tied in appropriately to set the mood, that's when everything just popped. Everybody just really enjoyed watching these intro sequences, and it was just positive across the board. So I knew I was onto something. So that's when, at this point, I really ran with it and started wrapping the intros even more around where we're going, what we're about to explore, information about the mines if I was able to find any, And that's still, for the most part, what I'm doing up to today.
Home to some 200,000 abandoned mines, Nevada is a state rich in mining history, minerals, and precious metals. Shortly before becoming our nation's 36th state in 1864, Nevada attracted thousands of miners from the gold fields of California to work in large mines such as the Comstock Lode in Virginia City. Then, at the turn of the century, large deposits of silver were discovered near Tonopah, with huge deposits of gold found further south in Goldfield in 1902 and Rhyolite in 1905, just to name a few. Ghost towns, ore processing mill sites, open pits, and abandoned underground mines are scattered all across Nevada, so for the next 6 months, come with me as I take you to some of the most remote and interesting locations across this great state. Today, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, we begin our summer adventure season with some remote gold mines containing interesting geology, artifacts, and I show you firsthand just one of the many extreme dangers in abandoned mines. Abandoned mines are interesting, intriguing, and sometimes even enticing, but without the proper knowledge, experience, and safety equipment, exploring an abandoned mine could cost you your life. Armchair exploring is the safest way to explore an abandoned mine, so please, stay out, stay alive, and enjoy the show.
Episode 49. All right, so here's when I made my way back to Nevada, and I needed a brand new intro. So I'm looking around the area trying to decide on what looks like a whole lot of fun, and just to the north of Goldfield, between Goldfield and Silver Peak, there's an old dry lake out there. And I thought to myself, yeah, you know, that'd make a great backdrop, you know. So I headed out there, and I was all alone. So here I am. I'm in my Jeep, and I'm literally flying the drone while I'm driving. But there's absolutely nothing to hit out there. It's just, you know, wide open. And so I'm driving the Jeep with my knee as I'm flying the drone, getting those shots. And then later on, I added in the jet and the sound effects and all of that. I had a lot of fun putting that one together.
On this episode of Abandoned and Forgotten Places.
We've got an incline shaft here. Oh, look at this, guys. Oh, cool.
So it was about this time when I start experimenting with what are called teaser intros. Now, what a teaser intro is that's when you're showing little tiny clips of the show that you're getting ready to show your audience. So, you know, what are the high points? What are the exciting things of the show? And you take each one of those little clips, put them together, throw some appropriate music behind it, and kind of tease the audience and make them want to watch a little bit more. I got this idea by watching various programs on Discovery Channel, the History Channel. You know, you can learn a lot if you pay attention to what the larger broadcast companies and production companies are doing out there. And that's what I've done over time. I've taken various elements from, you know, professional production companies and tried to incorporate them into my show.
Hidden deep in the mountains and hills of western Nevada, At an altitude of 5,600 feet lies an interesting silver mine with gold and copper being secondary commodities. Exposed lens quartz ore bodies exist all along the side of the hill, sheltered by large layers of rhyolite tuff and surrounded by thick layers of limestone laid down during the late Cretaceous and Neoproterozoic periods from 145 million to 541 million years ago. First discovered in 1864, this mine began production in 1865 with the implementation of an inclined rail trestle as well as a cabled tram system to help lower silver ore to the base of the hill. A report was filed in 1878 stating that this mine was producing period values of $100 per ton of silver, with over $200,000 totally produced throughout the lifetime of the mine. Today, all that remains is weathered and sun-baked timbers, with equipment and steel long since scrapped prior to World War II. We begin our adventure today by taking a look at one of the more interesting ruined structures in the area, and we take another look at the adit where I was forced to retreat due to the presence of some sort of large animal. Critters, large and small, make abandoned mines their home, so today, come with me as we investigate and try to determine what type of animal was living in this abandoned mine. From its highest peaks to its lowest valleys, Nevada is rich in precious metals and minerals, unlike any other state in the United States. Vast aerial views reveal an abundance of abandoned mines, and this small corner of Nevada is no exception. With its towering ore bins, ruined structures, and giant waste rock piles, this valley is one of a kind. On this episode of Abandoned and Forgotten Places, I rewind the clock and take you back to one of my favorite sites and where I filmed episode 29 1 year ago. Erected in 1924 and slowly decaying from the ravages of time, ore bins large and small are scattered all throughout this valley, and upon closer inspection, reveal some interesting carpentry and framing methods hand cut by miners long gone. And with an abundance of waste rock, these piles offer clues as to the sheer size and complexity of the workings below. Scarred by high graders operating from 1925 to 1931, an aerial view reveals the ore vein with its open stopes and cuts extending across the top of the hill. Below lie even more waste rock piles of excavated material directly associated with haulage adits designed to intersect the base of the vein. Mining methods, both old and new, can still be seen all throughout this area, with adits from the 1920s to open pits from 1987. So today, come along with me as I continue the story and take you to the depths of a 480-foot incline shaft and reveal yet another undiscovered area of this abandoned mine. Throughout Nevada, many abandoned mines are a complete mystery. With no data available via public record, one can only search for clues as to what was being mined. Shallow shafts and prospect pits act as a window into the surrounding geology, and with a little observation, one can make an educated guess as to what the miners were going after. Today on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, me and a lifelong friend take you into an abandoned mine that was left unexplored from last summer's Nevada adventures. With a sizable waste rock pile and loads of exterior artifacts rusting away in the high desert environment, this abandoned mine turned out to be a lot larger and far more interesting than we both anticipated. Because of their layout and challenging physical requirements, incline shafts are always some of my favorite mines to explore. With their wooden collars, sketchy ladders, and compressed stalls holding back tons of rock, these types of abandoned mines always make for an interesting adventure. So today, come along with me and Mr. M as we adventure into the very bottom of this long-forgotten mine and try to determine what was being mined, as well as explore the interesting configuration and artifacts of this abandoned mine. Discovered in 1880 and worked off and on until 1982, the Soaring Eagle mine provided miners old and new a wealth of gold, silver, lead, and barite. Modern miners from the early 1980s erected a mill and gravity separation equipment which utilized water from a nearby spring and collected into holding tanks that can still be seen today. Rusted dreams of miners long gone are evident in the copious amounts of trash and decaying structures scattered all throughout the area, including a collapsed office, miners' sleeping quarters, and a blacksmith shop, with nearby concrete foundations that once supported ambitious projects such as an aerial tram tower and rail platform utilized for unloading rich ore into waiting trucks. Long before modern chainsaws, hatchet marks high on the hill indicate the manual removal of western juniper and single-leaf pinyon pine trees to make way for a cable tram system located high on the crest of the hill. Today, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, I take you to nearly 8,000 feet above sea level. Follow an interesting rail system which once led to a manually hand-brake tram tower erected in place by miners from the 1940s. This rarely seen steel cross-tie rail system winds its way through uplifted dolomite limestone and native pine trees to reveal long abandoned artifacts such as a dual piston compressor and flywheel from the 1920s. So today, come along with me as I explore the Soaring Eagle's 500-foot-long haulage at it, follow its extensive drifts, climb sketchy ladders into huge stopes only to reveal its massive tabular ore deposit, and discovered its long-lost artifacts deep in this abandoned mine. Discovered in 1932 and worked heavily from 1934 to 1936, the Iron Horse Gold Mine produced nearly 1/4 of an ounce of gold per ton of ore, and is a fine example of just how quickly gold-bearing ore can be removed from the side of a mountain. Blasted out long ago, miners worked their way straight up and along extended tabular ore veins consisting of mostly soft limonite, iron, and hematite via a process called stoping, with clearly seen evidence of long-removed ore veins high on the side of the hill. Finishing shacks that once contained gold concentration equipment, such as high-concentration shaker tables, now lie rotting and sun-bleached below what once was a medium-sized mill site with clearly recognizable tailings piles and concrete pylons that once held crushing equipment such as a stamp mill and ball mill. Mines such as this require many cases of dynamite, and this vented roof powder shack is easily recognizable, nestled between two pinyon pine trees far removed from the mill site for safety. Today on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, I take you deep inside only 1 week after western Nevada was rocked by a 6.5 earthquake. Along its extensive haulage at it and drifts, I'll show you damage sustained as well as take you high up into one of its towering stopes to get a glimpse of the vein hiding deep within this abandoned mine.
Okay, now, here's the tricky part when making intros. Depending on how it's edited and depending on how the clips are being cut on crescendo, each one of these intros has a certain feel about it. It has a certain mood, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to match your voice to that mood, okay? It takes a little bit of skill. It takes a little bit of talent, and a lot of you guys have asked me on many occasions, how did you get your radio voice? Well, talking on the telephone for 20 years, selling fireworks to customers, developed my voice, because when you're on the phone with your customers, you want to enunciate, you want to speak very clearly. And so I brought that into the show, and I started using the tone of my voice to match with my intros that I was creating. Now, sometimes I got it right, sometimes I got it really wrong. There was a few in there that I look back on and I just kind of go, oh, that was terrible. I mean, it was just too slow, or whatever. I didn't like it, but I've gotten much better at it now. But that's how this part of the intro process was developed regarding my voiceovers.
In remote locations such as this, the life of a miner was a tough one indeed. Far removed from cities or towns, the Silver Souls mine camp housed between 30 to 40 men at the height of operations, and was considered to have one of the toughest crews in the area. Miners lived in boarding houses and worked in the mine for 10 or 12 days before receiving their pay in conjunction with their days off. Some were young men who had just graduated from high school, while others were seasoned miners with parents or relatives who were once miners themselves. Despite the hardships of living and working in a mine camp, the landscape surrounding the Silver Souls mine was a beautiful one indeed. With its native juniper, pinyon pine trees, and beautiful vistas, the sights and sounds of this camp must have been well received after a long day of working in the inky black bowels of the earth. Today, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, walk with me on a relaxing tour of the Silver Souls cabin complex as I attempt to relive the life of a miner once his shift was over. We will exit the mine and walk in the footsteps of the miner himself as we work our way up through the various workshops, offices, and bunkhouses and explore each and every room along the way. Abandoned mine exploring is dangerous and exciting, but sometimes the structures outside the mine tell an equally interesting story. Now, let's explore the Silver Souls cabin complex. Discovered in 1920, and with its primary commodity being silver, the Silver Souls mine was worked heavily from 1952 to 1958 and extracted high-grade silver ore up to 365 ounces per ton from brecciated hydrothermal deposits up to 6 feet wide. Then, in 1959, tragedy struck with 3 men falling victim to a massive collapse of a stoked-out area between the 200 and 300-foot levels. According to a detailed report, the men were in the process of removing rich pillars of ore that were being used to brace up and support the hanging wall of the stope they were working in when the collapse occurred. Massive amounts of rock, skulls, and other debris came crashing down and entombed the 3 men somewhere directly above the 300 level. All across Nevada, rescue personnel arrived at the site and worked tirelessly for 3 weeks trying to recover the 3 men. With no success of reaching the men from the 300 level, an incline shaft was blasted in immediately to the left side of the main haulage adit, in hopes the men's remains could be accessed and recovered from the far left side of the stope they were working in. Despite an incredible amount of effort, the remains of the 3 miners were never recovered, and still remain somewhere between the 200 and 300 foot levels to this very day. Today, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, I begin by showing you every adit, drift, and incline from the 200 level to surface, before eventually taking you to the 500 foot level in part 3. Then, in part 4, I will try to access the area of the mine where the 3 brave miners lost their lives in an attempt to discover their remains. Nevada has had many seismic events in the last 61 years, and it is my hope material has been dislodged which will allow me access into their tomb. Now, come with me on this incredible exploration of the Silver Souls mine. Previously on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, Episode 57.
I'm gonna have you go up there and open that door, so if something jumps out, it's gonna jump out on you and not me. It's still moving, isn't it? Could use a little bit of, could use some grease, but... Oh yeah, and I can see sunlight all the way up in there. Fantastic.
Previously on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, Episode 58.
This is a good moment to talk about that 6.5 earthquake that we had. We're in a very, very unstable section of this mine right now. Even I have my limits, guys. That's just, in my opinion, reckless.
Previously on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, Episode 59.
Actually, I'm just going to keep kind of panning around. There's so much to take in. Let's get out of this section. That's very, very sketchy. Okay, so here we are at what has now turned out to be the most popular video series since I've started Abandoned and Forgotten Places, and that's when I documented the Silver Souls mine. Now, there's a lot of fun stuff about the Silver Souls mine complex that I want to tell you about, and I could go on for hours. But one of the funnest things that happened when we were documenting that mine was, I think we were out there filming part 4 or part 5, something like that. And when we exited the mine, here is a sticker on the windshield of Mr. M's Jeep. That's what we were in at the time. And I look at the sticker and it says Wonder Hussy. And Mr. M and I are looking at this sticker and going, how in the world did this thing get on the windshield of the Jeep? So we turned to Randy and we immediately started blaming Randy. Oh, Randy, you're pulling our leg. You got this sticker from somewhere, you know, so on and so forth. But it wasn't until later I learned that indeed Wonder Hussy was at the exact same mine that we were at that very day. Pure coincidence that this happened. She was outside documenting the surrounding cabins and old structures while we were inside of the mine, and I was documenting where the miners had passed away in that collapse. But yeah, it was not staged. That was 100% pure coincidence. And so what I did is I took her sticker, and to this day it's still in the corner of the windshield here of old Bob.
Warning. This video shows animals that have fallen down mine shafts and died. Viewer discretion advised.
Vertical mine shafts, large and small, exist all throughout the western United States. Typically protected by only a few strands of barbed wire, these abandoned pits lie in wait for their next victim. Today, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, I take you down a 114-year-old mine shaft and show you firsthand how these seemingly bottomless pits can become death traps for all types of animals. The temptation is great to throw objects down these deep shafts, but beware. One false step and you too will fall victim and suffer an unimaginable fate. Now this was, right here, my most popular video of all time. At this moment, it's up to 2.3 million views. for some reason, there was the perfect combination of a good title and a good thumbnail. It came together and this video just exploded. And I had absolutely no intentions whatsoever of it doing so. Here's the story behind it, guys. Mr. M was up in Oregon, and I had some footage that I needed to edit that I was working on at the time. Well, Randy come walking by, and I say, "Hey, Randy, I'm bored. There's a mine not too far from here. I want to take a break from editing, and let's go do something today. Let's head out to this mine." Well, when we got into it, I was just figuring it was going to be your typical horizontal haulage at it. And it turned out it went in and intersected with a vertical shaft that, you know, looked doable. So I got down into that thing, and that's when I started finding all of these dead animals. And eventually when I got into the bottom, I found that dead coyote that was like mummified, and then somebody eventually went down there years ago and propped him up against the wall, making him really creepy looking. So many people have asked me about that mine. How come all of those animals died? Was there a pocket of bad air down in there? Did they just fall in and of course they died from starvation or lack of water? Okay, so here's what happened. So every spring, the portal in that mine fills up with water, so there's a puddle in there. And what that water is doing is it's attracting all of the animals into the area. So they're coming in and they're getting a drink. And the ones that are doing that are either accidentally falling into the shaft, or the predators in the area know that that's a watering hole, so they hang out waiting for rabbits to come in and take a drink, and then they chase after it trying to get a quick meal, and they themselves become victims. Now you have to understand, this has been taking place for 100 years. If I remember correctly, that mine was dropped in I think 1907, 1906, somewhere in there. And a lot of people challenged me because they were like, no way, it can't be that old because the ladders look like brand new, etc. No, here in the high deserts of Nevada, the way that the climate is with its very low humidity protects these mines. They don't rot like they would as if they're receiving some sort of like groundwater penetration, or if they're flooded like you see in a lot of northern mines. A lot of the mines here are just like that. These ladders, they look as though they were just built yesterday. So besides the collar starting to fail down in there, that's why I went down into this mine, because it looked relatively safe. And I'm going to take you guys back into this one in a future episode. I wanted to do something really cool with the 360 camera, and now that we've got the ropes and the harness, I may just take you deeper.
Hidden deep in the rolling hills of western Nevada, and with the white mountains of California acting as an incredible backdrop, this abandoned mine has a view second to none. Searching for abandoned mines can be a rewarding experience, but from time to time, I get lucky and find abandoned mines that aren't on any maps and are completely undocumented or hidden from public record. Long after a bulldozer was used to cover up the portal, Mother Nature reopened this abandoned mine, allowing me access into workings never before seen. Then, later in the program, I take you higher up on the hill to explore a nearby incline shaft with a huge ventilation pipe installed that was supposedly used to force fresh air into the workings below. Discovered in 1920, and with production only lasting a couple of years, the Roger mine produced gold, copper, lead, manganese, and zinc, with silver being its primary commodity. With its small head frame, jib wheel, and hoist house, this abandoned shaft shows all the telltale signs of a likely funded operation. It's rare in the United States to be the very first person to explore an abandoned mine. So today, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, come with me on this first-time exploration of an abandoned 1980s silver mine. With all of its artifacts still lying in place and undisturbed, this was a fun exploration, knowing full well we were the first inside since this mine was sealed. Now, come with me as we explore and reach the very depths of the Van Haven Mine. Previously on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, Episode 62.
Yep. But don't put any weight on the boards above it.
That's really neat, guys. Look at that. Here's an area where all the rock bolts failed. Wow, yeah. Kind of looks like Freddy Krueger's fingernails hanging down from the back of the mine, doesn't it? Wow, would you look at the size of this place? Mr. M, go ahead and walk out in there so that... Unbelievable. Holy cow. This is so super cool.
Mining camps and mill sites, large and small, exist all over the state of Nevada. Some exist within close proximity to cities and towns, while others lie abandoned and preserved due to their incredible remoteness and difficulty of access. With rooms filled with discarded artifacts from mostly the 50s and 60s, these cabins made for an interesting explore as we search the area for adits and shafts that would allow us access into the mine. Mining camps, such as this, sometimes have large mining artifacts lying around, and this site didn't disappoint. A rarely seen trailer-mounted double-decker gravity separation system with quad shaker tables and hopper was an interesting discovery to say the least. One can only imagine the engineering behind such a device. Then, nearby, we discovered a thermal trommel that was used to roast sulfide ore, ultimately allowing a more efficient recovery of silver and gold. Discovered in 1860 and operated sporadically through 1960, the Sullivan Mine produced molybdenum, tungsten, zinc, gold, and lead, with silver being its primary commodity. So today, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, come with me as I explore the Sullivan Mill and take you on an incredible subterranean journey as I wind my way through the mountain, searching for artifacts and hidden passages. Abandoned mines as large as this are unique and are some of my most favorite places to explore. With multiple adits, drifts, and levels, one could easily get lost in such a labyrinth. Now, come with me as we begin our incredible journey, exploring the depths of the Sullivan Mine. Abandoned mines can be categorized in 5 different levels. Level 1 are tourist mines with only a few drifts, while Level 2 might have a raise or a winze, small stopes, and ore chutes. Level 3 will have multiple levels with access via an inclined or vertical shaft, and it may have a laddered winze or ore passes extending from upper levels into ore chutes or muck stations. Even more sketchy, Level 4 will have vertical shafts and steep stopes that can only be accessed by the use of special equipment such as ropes and rigging. Level 5 will have you roping into hundreds if not 1,000-foot shafts that are severely degraded, with the real possibility of rocks and debris falling and hitting you during descent. Today on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, I take you into a unique tourist mine. With graffiti dating back to the early 1900s, this mine gives you a sense that it was visited by hundreds of people over the decades. Now, come with me as I try to climb and crawl my way into areas where most tourists dare not go, as we work our way through the drifts and levels of the darn tourist's mine. mines represent the leap forward in mining technology over the last 70 years. With the use of ammonium nitrate, huge excavators, and massive haul trucks, men can move entire mountains and treat millions of tons of low-grade ore that would otherwise have been left behind by miners 100 years ago. Vertically rising up through cut benches in this massive pit, one can clearly see the remains of what once was a large stope excavated by miners from 1880 to the early 1900s. Visible pockets of limonite, layers of galena, and hydrothermally altered andesite are all signs that this mountain contained large quantities of silver, with over 22 million ounces recovered. Today, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, I take you deep inside the opposite side of the mountain, where older workings, unharmed by open pit operations, still exist. Together we will explore all the adits and drifts on the 100 level before taking you down a very dangerous decline to discover hidden, never-before-seen artifacts in the Candelabra mine. Previously on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, Episode 66.
There's a pressure vessel, otherwise known as an accumulator, hiding right down in there. There's what's left of a bucket of some kind. Hey Randy, I found your Daisy Dukes laying here on the ground. This is definitely a decline shaft. It goes all the way down in there.
With over 110,000 square miles to explore, the vastness of Nevada is an abandoned mine explorer's dream come true. According to Abandoned Mine Lands, otherwise known as AML, over 200,000 abandoned mines exist in this great state, all in varying degrees of danger and disrepair. Today on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, we continue our exploration of the Candelabra Mining District as we work ourselves closer and closer to the open pit operations conducted in the 1980s. As miners probe the hillside looking for ever richer silver deposits, a long string of adits, some with wooden portals, were blasted in to allow access into the centralized structure of the vein, as well as to offer a means of ore removal. Designed for keeping loose surface material from sloughing into the entrance of the mine, wooden portals come in all shapes and sizes, with many displaying pride of workmanship, which can sometimes be an indication of the workings inside. Not every mine has fancy wooden portals. Some mines, like this one shown here, are simple hard rock entrances that utilize the already stable hillside as a means of entry without the need of a wooden structure. Solo exploring abandoned mines and caves has been a side hobby of mine for close to 35 years, and along the way, I've made new friends with unique personalities that have allowed each new adventure to be even more fun. Now, come with me as we continue to explore the Candelabra Mining District and have a few laughs along the way. This week, on Abandoned and Forgotten Places, we return to the Candelabra Mining District to seek out and explore the last few remaining mines in the area and to get an up-close look at yet another open-pit mine. 4 weeks ago, we began our adventure documenting the furthermost mine in the area, undamaged by open-pit operations conducted in the 1980s. With their extensive haulage adits and drifts over 1,000 feet long, these two mines took us completely by surprise. Then, working ever closer to the massive pit, we discovered 2 more locations filled with interesting artifacts and incredible geology, pointing to the fact that this area contained massive amounts of silver ore and still does to this very day. Exploring abandoned mines throughout the Candelabra mining district was a lot of fun, and we certainly had a few laughs along the way. Many mines were Class 1 tourist mines, but each one had an interesting configuration nevertheless. However, one challenge remained, and that was to descend into the depths of the open pit operations to see if I could access workings blasted into the mountain nearly 100 years ago.
Alright guys, well once again, thank you for coming along and watching part 2 of my 3-part 100th episode trip down memory lane. I'm really happy you enjoyed this one, and tomorrow morning part 3 will come out at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Alright, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Take care now. Bye-bye.